I'm Billy S, welcome back to the channel. Today we're finishing off my ranking of the Hollow Knight bosses as I reveal my top 15. Did you miss parts 1 or 2? Check the description for links to the previous videos, and then come back here for my final verdict. So without further ado, my top 15 Hollow Knight bosses, ranked. And let me know which boss is your favourite down below. Starting off the creme de la creme of Hollow Knight, we have a boss that will always put a smile on everyone's face. How the developers made literal shit a fun time, I'll never know, as we face number 15, Dung Defender. Found in the depths of the Royal Waterways, the Dung Defender feverishly protects the path leading to Yzma's Grove, and behind his jovial demeanor and upbeat boss music is a lonely, isolated existence. Though I'll touch on his lore in the White Defender entry later in the video, instead let's focus on this first boss battle and why it could be overwhelming to new players. You see, if you find the Royal Waterways with only 1 or 2 nail upgrades, Ogrim's health pool can seem quite vast, and the Dung Defender becomes a battle of endurance, finding time to heal between attacks to ultimately win the day. He has a variety of moves he can whip out, but they're all very formulaic. He can use Dung Toss, where he'll chuck either 1 or 2 dung balls into the air. If he chucks 1, he'll follow it up with his swimming attack, where he'll dive up and down the arena floor with a hitbox that can catch you off guard. If he chucks 2, he'll either follow up by curling himself into a 3rd ball, which you can attack as he bounces around the arena, or he'll dive completely underground to perform his burst attack. Here he will aforementionedly burst up from a marked spot on the ground, launching 4 dung balls into the air that act as projectiles to avoid. This is the crux of his moveset, and is very vulnerable to any charms that increase the player's nail range, as while the Dung Defender has a large hitbox while forming his dung balls, with the right equipment you can strike him from a safe distance as he does so, and his burst attack is very easy to punish as long as you stay close to where he emerges from. Same goes for at 50%, where he enters a frenzy and uses faster attacks, dash out the way, punish, rinse, and repeat. The Dung Defender starts off tough because the dung balls can be tough to avoid on a first run. His moveset has a lot of nuance to it, but why I have this fight ranked so high is everything surrounding it. The build-up of the fecal pipeways, the laughter of the defender as you approach, the exciting upbeat music. It's so different to anything or anyone else in Hallownest, and feels like a beacon for the player, a rare bright spot in an otherwise very dark game. For anyone keeping track across the last few videos, you'll know I only have 1 more Warrior Dream fight to include in my ranking, and this'll likely be a controversial take, but introducing number 14, No Eyes. And may I just say, what the fuck? Have you read into No Eye's lore? It's beyond harrowing. A warrior of Hallownest who couldn't sleep due to the infection in her dreams, she made the ultimate choice to blind herself and the bugs around her to stave off the infection, yet this instead ended in her death. And now as a spirit, she fears the light and fights the night because of the glimmer of his Lumafly lantern. Yet in defeat, she realizes the truth and asks the knight to take the sanctuary's spirits to a place where the radiance cannot reach them, the Dream Nail. But then there's the original Bacchus story that had to be toned down as it was too disturbing. Away in battle, she returned to find the infection had spread, and moving to save her children, she found them infected, and as she couldn't bring herself to fight them, she ripped out her own eyes so she wouldn't have to see them come at her, and sang the lullaby you hear throughout the fight as she perished. Damn. As for the boss fight itself, it's a pure platforming and spatial awareness challenge. No Eyes will appear throughout the arena, and your goal is to chase her down and strike at her to win. The only attack she can use is her lullaby, which causes spirits to appear from off-screen, moving in wave-like patterns that are a clear reference to Castlevania's Medusa heads. Because of the predictability of the attacks, it's less about reaction speed, and more about careful positioning, knowing when it's best just to let No Eyes warp somewhere else before continuing the attack, and when to go in and get those hits. In Godhome, her ascended form has a more dangerous arena with a far less uniform platform layout, and a series of thorns that can cause combo damage if you're hit by a Medusa head and then knocked into said thorns. Brutal stuff, all set to No Eye's trademark, haunting lullaby. This fight has atmosphere in spades and provides a nice palate cleanser from some of the more moveset heavy bosses in the game. Not for everyone, I recognise that, but for me, as a fan of old school 2D platformers, this makes me feel right at home. Next up, we have the last of the original base game Dream bosses, as we look at number 13, the Lost Kin. This is the Dream variant of the Broken Vessel boss fight, and can be accessed by Dream nailing Broken Vessel's corpse in their boss arena. And of the aforementioned base game Dream bosses, the Lost Kin is the one that I personally fear every time I play. It shares its moveset with Broken Vessel, except it loses the Cascade Headbang Infection move, and while it has one less attack, those that remain are stronger, faster, and more deadly. Its slash attacks have a quicker wind-up, requiring a faster reaction speed. Its leap is quicker, rising and falling much faster, making the Lost Kin's most dangerous feature its ability to jump on top of the player before you've even realized it. When Lost Kin uses its Sword Slam ability, now 6 infection orbs will fly out instead of 4. And perhaps my least favourite addition to the fight, but one that I do admit amps up the difficulty in a well-designed way, is his balloon attack, where he summons infection balloons. They spawn at intervals of every 2 to 3 seconds and can build up very quickly, though they still die in one hit. Having to strike a balance of avoiding the Lost Kin while also culling the infection balloons is the toughest part of this fight outside of adapting to the faster speed. You won't be able to heal during the action, so staggering the boss becomes paramount for survival, which I enjoy. It really forces the players to learn the moveset without any cheese. Though healing can also be a tough affair, as if you're on a bad cycle with the infection balloon spawns, or one decides to spawn right next to you while Lost Kin is staggered, you won't have the time to heal. It can feel a bit unfair in certain situations. I'd personally get the Shade Cloak before attempting this fight to make dodging through specific attacks easier, as it'll give you extra invincibility you need to handle specific moves, but ultimately it's the same fight as before, just faster. And that's exactly what Lost Kin needed to feel more threatening. It's one of the few boss fights in the pantheon of Hallownest that, on a bad run, can decimate my health bar, and that's not something I can say about a lot of bosses. It's not even harder either, it just has more health, because they already had the difficulty tweaked to perfection. If only I enjoyed the infection balloons, maybe this fight would be in my top 10. Over the course of this series, astute viewers will note that I often gravitate towards bosses with simple yet refined movesets, ones that take away elements of random chance and instead give me something where I can go, okay, that's how that works, that combos into that, I can learn this. And I knew Hollow Knight was special when one of the earliest fights in the game gave me this exact sentiment. Introducing number 12, Hornet Protector. The first battle with Hornet, you've chased her across Greenpath, and as you reach her boss room, you find her standing near another slain vessel, and thus, the fight begins. Here you have no movement tools at your disposal, no dash, no downward dive, no double jump. It means that both you and Hornet move with precision, and every movement you make has to matter. You can't just run or jump willy-nilly, you need to understand Hornet's moveset. And for the early game, where you're likely to have your base health, I think it's a perfect test to see if you have what it takes to handle the rest of Hollow Knight's world. She has 4 basic attacks you need to learn, plus her ability to leap and run through the arena. She has 2 lunges, one on the ground, one in the air. Both will cause Hornet to lunge in the direction of the knight, giving you the chance to pogo off of her if you're able to time it well. There's her throw attack, where she'll stand on one edge of the arena and throw her needle, extending it before pulling it back towards her. If you see this attack coming, you can jump over the needle, pogo on Hornet for the duration of the attack, and get out of the way as it ends, getting major damage. Lastly, there's her Gossamer Storm, where she'll coat herself in threads and create an area of effect attack. This only happens in the air, so if you're wary, you're not going to get hit by it. Healing can be done during her throw, her Gossamer Storm, or by stunning her, but I find it's more important to focus on damaging Hornet instead. If that soul of yours can be used to hit her with some vengeful spirits, all the better. There's just something so fluid about this fight that, while easy, feels extremely satisfying to master and overcome. Difficulty isn't the be-all and end-all for me in my rankings, as much as it's remembering a good fight with some banger music. And I think Hornet Protector fits that bill. In her second fight, it gets more hectic and intense, which some may prefer, but I prefer this more calculated Hornet from Fight 1. Just missing out on my top 10 fights in Hollow Knight, we have number 11, Radiance. That's right, the secret final boss of the main game doesn't even crack my top 10. I'm sorry to the base Radiance stands out there, but it's just how I feel. Time to justify. Radiance is the true antagonist of Hollow Knight, the source of the infection that spread throughout Hallownest and brought the entire civilization to ruin. And to even face her, you need to collect the Voidheart charm by completing the Queen's Gardens, the White Palace, and heading to the Abyss. Here, Hornet will appear to help you during the Hollow Knight fight, allowing you to dream nail into the prison of the Radiance, where you can challenge the literal sun for victory. The first time playing this game and seeing that light form into the boss was mind-blowing. An amazing introduction followed by some of the best boss music in the game. The battle itself is one of multiple phases, and nobody can seem to agree on what those phases are, so my personal definition is Phase 1 being everything up to her first stagger, Phase 2 being the segment with the floating platforms, Phase 3 being the Ascension, and for base Radiance that's actually where the fight ends, while Absolute Radiance, who we'll cover later, has a Phase 4 for good measure. Phase 1 is probably my favourite section, as all the different attacks are fast enough to feel threatening, but slow enough to react to. You have a lot more grace than the AbsRad version of the fight, which fits. Base game Radiance is meant to be the final story boss, unless you don't want to make it too difficult to the point of rage quitting. We already had to deal with the White Palace after all. From beam and sword bursts, to sword rains and sword walls that players have to shadow dash through, walls of light that cross the screen, and deadly orbs that threaten to strike the player, spike floors that appear throughout Phase 1, there's so much to keep track of and everything can combo into each other. On top of this, every attack does 2 masks of damage, meaning every movement by the player has to be on point. You can heal at the end of Phase 1 after the Radiance's first stagger, but then you get to the floating platform phase, which is my least favourite part of the fight. Radiance will teleport around the arena, and you can either follow or stick to a chosen few platforms and wait for her to come to you. Whichever way you go, you have to avoid tough attacks and do enough damage to warp her upwards for Phase 3. But honestly, I have no issues with this section in this variant of the fight. Most of my struggles come from Absolute Radiance, so I'll save my gripes for there. I think Radiance, especially on that final ascension as you're dodging gigantic laser beams to reach the top, is such a satisfying story fight, the Abyss constantly rising up to meet the creature until you and the Hollow Knight deal the final blow and end the infection for good. It's a great send-off to the main campaign and a satisfying yet sad hidden ending as the Knight sacrifices its own body, returning to the Abyss following the fight. I imagine this will be the canon ending taken into Silksong, but who knows? Anyone can achieve a win here, and that feels great. But when I think about my top 10 favourite Hollow Knight fights, there are so many other battles I'd rather fight over the Radiance. Speaking of the Radiance, I'm not done yet. At number 10, we have the Absolute Radiance, the hardest challenge in Hollow Knight, and the boss of the Pantheon of Hallownest. I'll be straight up with you guys, I have yet to defeat the Absolute Radiance in proper play. I've won in the Hall of Gods, and that's the footage you're seeing, but getting to it in the Pantheon is proving hellish. I won't repeat everything I said in the last entry, instead I'm just going to cover my experience with AbsRad so you can at least see where I'm coming from when I say, this is the most toxic relationship I've had with a boss since millennia. What do I love about AbsRad? I like that it's a true endgame challenge. It's not designed for every player to attempt, let alone beat, and most people won't even reach AbsRad. That's okay. It's not gatekeeping content, it's rewarding players who have the skill to make it that far. I love that the moveset doesn't change up, meaning you can bring over any muscle memory from the original Radiance fight, but does it help? Not really, it's nice to see though. I really enjoy the Ascension phase, as it really feels like a sniper is trained on you at all times, and while I haven't perfected my climb yet, far from it, I can tell it's something that I'll eventually have click with me after enough attempts. And that last final phase is a nice addition, albeit I have to keep my adrenaline under control to actually succeed. I know you can cause the orbs to fly off screen above you, and it takes only around 10 hits to beat the boss, but it's also where I feel it's easiest to make mistakes. I'm sure once I've aced the climb more, I can finish that last phase with ease. I also love Phase 1. The way all the different moves combo together is so hectic, but playing it safe is pretty rewarding, with the only irritating moments being when Radiance keeps comboing sword walls and sword rains together. No, my main issue with the Absolute Radiance is the floating platform phase. Unlike the normal Radiance fight, where moves are slower, giving you more opportunities to close distance, Absrad says, "I dare you to try following me as I teleport," because she knows it's a death wish for the player. You're stuck picking a couple of platforms and praying that Absrad will teleport into your vicinity so you can get some attacks off. And this could happen quickly, or this could never happen until you're whittled down by surprised beam bursts or an orb you couldn't see because the attack blends in too far with the background. I really wish her orbs were a different color, not that dark yellow, but maybe a darkened black, or something with more of a sense of contrast. I can't see them spawn sometimes, and it doesn't feel like a get good situation, but a get your eyesight checked situation. This fight isn't luck-based, I know that, it's just insanely hard, but when I'm spending 40 plus minutes on the Pantheon of Hallownest and then Absrad decides on Phase 2 to just never come towards me, I have every right as the player to get frustrated, especially when I've read every guide, I've tried a ton of different builds, I've practiced a ton, and it's just not coming together. It's hard to accept that I'm just not good enough, and yet I can't vent about this boss because a majority of Hollow Knight fans will then say, "Get good," or "Have you tried this strategy that I've already tried a billion times?" And yet I have Absrad above its original fight. Why? Because I know that despite my frustration, if I ever do beat this boss, I will feel euphoric. It'll never be my favorite boss in the game, don't get me wrong, but I know beating it will have made all the stress worth it. I'm honestly not really sure how to end this segment. My feelings with Absrad are really complicated and turbulent. I want to love this fight as much as the people who have it as their favorite do, but it just doesn't click with me that way. It's like a really good friend, but someone who never pushes into that inner circle. Moving on. I have been told by my legal team that I have to announce the next boss using all their designated titles, so at number 9, we have the Invincible, Fearless, Sensual, Mysterious, Enchanting, Vigorous, Diligent, Overwhelming, Gorgeous, Passionate, Terrifying, Beautiful, Powerful, Grey Prince Zote. So remember how Zote steals yo girl in Dirtmouth? Well, Bretta let her mind wander too much, and in her fanfic-laden desires, she birthed her dream man through her obsession, and you two can fight him by dream-nailing the creepy statue she built in her spare time. It's a shame she has such a creative mind to waste it all chasing the true love of whatever the fuck Zote is. I have a big love-hate relationship with this form of Zote. On the one hand, the sheer amount of charm and hilarity baked into his moveset is astounding. He's the definition of someone falling upwards into success, often quite literally, as the majority of his moveset involves him tripping over and causing shockwaves. He can leap up to 3 times across the arena, and every time he lands, shockwaves form which you have to avoid. On his third leap, he also has the power to fall through the floor, creating a shadow slam, where he'll fall from the ceiling to either the left or right of the player, creating a larger shockwave you have to dodge. In fact, Grey Prince Zote is a powerful challenge because his entire moveset outside of his flail attack is designed to keep you grounded. Being in the air for any period of time will result in Zote jumping at you, causing quick damage that builds up. Instead, you have to dash underneath him when he jumps, avoid shockwaves, and stay attentive. He can summon Zotelings every once in a while, giving you ample time to attack Zote himself while he's spawning them, and he can summon volatile Zotelings that act as bombs, which in Pantheons do double damage. The challenge here is in how quickly you can damage Zote, because his moveset punishes those who aren't aggressive, as his kit is one of the most random to dodge. Not literal RNG, there's no luck involved here, but it's so wacky that it gives the impression of randomness. There's only one aspect of this fight that I actually dislike, and that's how he can just start it off by walking right into you almost immediately. His walk animation truly is the devil's work. On the plus side, his base game fight has some fun variations, with each subsequent attempt getting tougher and tougher, and after 4 victories, Bretta actually leaves Dirtmouth, dumping that little punk Zote and going off to find her true love somewhere else. We stan an independent queen. On the flip side of the coin, Zote in the Pantheon of Hallownest is one of the toughest fights for me. I can generally beat him 90% of the time, but he's one of those bosses where the moment you make a single mistake, he can capitalize and you'll find 3 masks of health lost or more. A great time, a great fight, but one that feels punishing with a moveset whose element of comedy makes it harder to read. I still love his flail animation though, the man can't even bear to look at you as he skips forwards. From this point on, I genuinely only have positive things to say about the rest of the fights, so it's less of a case of what does each boss do better than each other, and more a case of which boss brings me the most joy. So let's start off our victory lap with number 8, the Hollow Knight. The final boss of first ending of the game, we've spent our whole time in Hallownest breaking open the seals of the Temple of the Black Egg so we can take on the creature within, our brethren chained up, the infection seeping out of him, for he was not pure enough to withstand the infection's influence. So we free him, and the fight begins. There are 2 ways to end the fight, either kill the Hollow Knight, or if you got the Void Heart, Dream Nail into the Radiance fight. Whichever way you go, I don't think this is a particularly hard battle, and instead aims to capture that same story feeling you get fighting Gwyn in Dark Souls, a creature that was once in its prime but has now fallen to decay. Phase 1, the knight can use a triple slash, a lunge, or a parry. The triple slash and lunge can both be dodged through with the shadow dash, or you can nail bounce over them. The Hollow Knight and his alternate form, the Pure Vessel, both share a weakness to nail pogos and attacks from above, so getting into the habit of attacking like that is worth the payoff. The parry especially needs to be shadow dashed through if triggered, or you'll take serious damage. In Phase 2, the knight gains infectious attacks, such as a barrage of infection blobs that launch out in an arc, which is the attack I struggle with the most, as well as a diving flame pillar, an attack style you'll have to get used to as the Hollow Knight appears above the knight and attempts to skewer you before summoning a series of flames. It's when you hit Phase 3 that the story begins to unfold though, and why I really love this fight. Team Cherry weren't afraid to put story over difficulty as the music recedes to a mournful march, while the boss begins to stab himself, attempting to halt the infection as best it can. More infection orb attacks, a bouncing balloon move where the Hollow Knight is moved by the infection itself, slamming after the knight's position in what is a sad state of affairs. All leading to Phase 4 where, if you're going for the first ending, you can see the Hollow Knight fall to their knees, attempting to start a combo. This boss gets weaker, you get stronger until you slay the beast and draw the infection inside yourself. Whether it's just you there, or Hornet beside you because you're a monster, the fight ends. A lot of people forget about this fight because it comes before the Radiance in the main game, and is overshadowed by the Pure Vessel in Godhome. But I wanted to make sure to give the tragedy of the original Vessel the love and attention it deserves. I knew it was something special, and I just feel awful for the poor thing. One of the most unlucky creatures in gaming. Happy holidays, viewers! I am trying to reach 20,000 subscribers on this channel by the summer of 2024, and I know we can do it. See how many of you guys aren't subscribed right now? We need to fix that. So be sure to parry that subscribe button to stay up to date on all of my future gaming content. Back to the video. We're back to the Pantheons once more, as the next boss on my list is number 7, Paintmaster Shio, the artist with a passion for nailsmiths. Obviously, of the 3 nail masters, Shio is my favorite because he gay as fuck, and I'm happy for the lovely couple. But it's his fight in Godhome that really appeals to me. They took the concept of an artist and a warrior, merged the two, and created a really fun fight that initially tests the player while giving us a well-constructed and well-telegraphed moveset to learn. He has 4 major attacks he can use, each denoted by a different color of paint. His paint splash, where he slashes the ground with blue paint, creating 3 paint blobs to travel forward in different arcs. His paint stomp, where he leaps into the air and creates a series of downward blobs before slamming the ground with red paint. There's his paint spear, which is an arena-spanning javelin that you can jump to avoid, denoted by yellow paint. And of course, his signature Great Slash ability, denoted by purple, where he'll slam the ground like his blue attack, creating a massive pillar of purple paint, before a series of paint blobs rain down from the ceiling. With Shio comboing these attacks together, the goal is to learn each move and avoid accordingly. And while they can seem daunting at first, I think this is the easiest of the final Pantheon fights, and is more celebrated for its unique style and flair than its difficulty. I mean, come on, when you stagger Shio, paint flies everywhere, and every attack coats the ground with this film of multicolored goodness. By the time I reached the Pantheon of Hallownest, I realized I could pretty much tank all of Shio's attacks with my fragile strength and life charms, so it became about staggering him as quickly as possible. And yet I still find this fight engaging even after I've gotten past the hurdle of its initial challenge, and that to me is the sign of a great battle. It's just a really good time and has the same sort of energy that the Dung Defender does. We're battling a man who has fully realized his painting dream, and I just think that's special. Let's hope his family's watching, I think they'd be proud. We've almost fully ascended, yet one of these gods must fall before our top 5. So, introducing to the stage, number 6, Troop Master Grimm. The head of the Grimm Troop, this enigmatic ringleader sends you on a quest throughout Hallownest to gather the flames of the dying kingdom for the Grimm child. Eventually though, he wishes to put the night to the test, and a battle within Grimm's tent begins. Watched by a crowd of Grimmkin, you have to defeat the Troop Master by learning his patterns and overcoming his battle of endurance. He has 5 main moves you can use, each with their own tells and ways to dodge. His fire bats are the easiest, as you jump into the air and over the 3 fire bats as they're launched. If you're too close when he starts the move though, he can teleport behind you and fire another bat. He has a dive dash, where he'll appear in the air and drill towards the player. I like to dash, then immediately double jump to avoid the kick that follows on the ground afterwards. His dash uppercut is the one that catches me off guard every now and then, as he'll swipe at you, which you can shadow dash through or away from, before launching upwards into the air, exploding into 5 fireballs that rain down in a set pattern. His cloak spikes have him create spikes from the ground, which you can view for a split second to position yourself. A great move to attack Grimm himself if you're close enough when he uses the attack. And lastly, there's his Pufferfish ability. He always uses this attack at 75%, 50%, and 25% health, appearing at the arena's center and sending out waves of fireballs you have to dodge through. Funnily enough though, this attack can be triggered at the start of the fight if you attack Grimm while he's bowing to you, actively wasting your time for your impatience. All of his moves flow together like a dance and have enough downtime so you can prep for the next attack, meaning he's easy to learn, with the battle becoming a true performance befitting this circus-style arena. In the Pantheon of Hallownest and Pantheon 3, he's even the final boss fight of the mid-portion of both, meaning defeating him grants you a nice rest. And as someone who finds his fight pretty easy, he's a nice breath of fresh air after dealing with the God Tamer prior. Yet he doesn't reach my top 5 because I just think his alternate variant is a much stronger fight. Wow, we made it. The Pantheon of the top 5 Hollow Knight bosses. I wonder what amazing fights await us here. First up, we have the hilariously named number 5, White Defender. This is the past form of the Dung Defender Ogrim, one of the 5 great knights of Hallownest, and by the game's end he has the potential to be the only one left. Hegemol is assumed dead given his armor was taken, Isma and Drya are confirmed to be dead, and Zamir dissipates into nothingness once her delicate flower quest is completed, leaving poor old Ogrim, the jolly dung defender, to hold down the fort as he desperately hopes for the return of the king and the kingdom. As the White Defender is an enhanced version of the Dung Defender, he shares many of the same attacks, but with the usual faster pace that Dream variant bosses now have. His main new move is his Spike Slam, where he'll strike the ground, causing spiked shockwaves nearby. You can only shade dash through them or away from them though, as they're too high to be dodged with the double jump. This Spike Slam can also be used during the Dung Toss attack, as he can throw up to 3 balls now before forming into a 4th himself, and at the end of this move he will always dive down into the ground, creating a Spike Slam that travels the entire distance of the arena, before finishing with a good old ground burst attack. He has the same element of challenge from his original form, but now he has the health and the power to stop some of those cheesier methods. While I still find his fight easy to burst down in Godhome, I can't deny that in terms of his moveset, it's one I'd love to learn and attempt on Radiant. In the base game, you can fight him up to 5 times, with the White Defender doing more damage on each attempt, and each time you get more lore on the Dung Defender until the 5th victory where he wishes to make you a true knight, even creating a statue in your honor. Naturally, I have yet to achieve this feat myself. Instead, I love that the White Defender tends to come at the end of Pantheon splits because I don't find his fight terribly hard. It's got complexity and the sense of fun fighting a proud knight at his prime, while also being easy to blitz through on the way to that final Pantheon 5 split. A really solid experience and totally deserving of a top 5 finish. I have to say, given the quality of Hollow Knight's DLC boss fights, to see a base game battle make it to the top 4 is an achievement in itself. But who can deny the absolute majesty that are number 4, the Mantis Lords? Found in the depths of the Mantis Village, there are many factors that let this boss stand out in comparison to prior fights. Firstly, the build-up. You've been battling your way through this hostile environment, slaying mantises, you've obtained a new movement tool, and finally you arrive at this large open area. The 3 lords watch you and shut the gate to Deep Nest if you approach. You step forwards and the prompt appears, Challenge. This prompt only appears twice in-game, and the other instance is against the fucking Radiants. The Mantis Lords command that level of respect? And thus the fight begins. The walls come down, spikes appear on the side of the arena, it's a cage match. The first Mantis Lord will attack, and it's this first phase that allows you to learn their movesets. They have 3 attacks they can use, a Lance Dash where they charge across the arena with their lances, a Lance Drop where they'll appear above you before dropping straight down, and their Blade Boomerang where they'll cling to a wall and launch a Wind Blade towards the knight. All of these attacks can be dodged with deft jumps and dashes, leading to a lot of pogoing and quick punishes. It's fast, fluid, and a great tool for teaching you about their positioning, as once the first Mantis Lord goes down, the second pair stand. Now it's a 2v1, the same moveset as before, except you have 2 enemies working independently of each other. One could do a Lance Drop followed by a Lance Dash, or vice versa. 2 Lance Drops, 2 dashes. The only attack they coordinate for is for the Blade Boomerang, where you have to deal with either a wider or shorter arc. I prefer the shorter arc because if I'm positioned right I have time to heal, but honestly this is a fight where on your winning run you'll likely manage it without taking any more than a hit or 2. It's a dance, where every single mistake is entirely up to the player, no BS from the game, and with a moveset so simple yet so perfectly overlapped, it creates one of my favourite battles in gaming. All of this set to what might be my favourite piece of boss music on the OST, potentially even more than Nightmare King Grimm's theme and Hornet's theme, but that might have to be a video for another day. This whole OST sets a high bar though, doesn't it? If only the game could take the concept of the Mantis Lords even further. Picking between this top 3 was like picking between my favourite children. I love all of these fights equally, but at number 3, we have the Pure Vessel. He's considered by many to be the best boss in Hollow Knight, and I truly think he's up there at the peak. I can't help comparing his story to that of Artorias from Dark Souls. In both games, we fight an infected variant of both characters, and in Dark Souls, I always said I wished I could fight Artorias in his prime, because what a fight that would be. The Hollow Knight developers then said hold my beer and decided for their game to embrace this trope, allowing us to fight a version of the Hollow Knight in his prime, the Pure Vessel. To the point where even as the fight starts and he does his raw animation, there's no sound. No voice, as all vessels were made to be. First fought at the top of the pantheon of the Knight, I think Pure Vessel has a case for toughest fight in this game because, spoilers, while I'm struggling with Absolute Radiance, it's always the Pure Vessel that ends my pantheon runs because I spend so much time practicing Absrad, I forget my muscle memory for Pure. His attacks start as variations of his Hollow Knight form, but much faster. His lunge, parry, triple slash combo, and fire pillars return, only this time the pillars are now giant soul nails. Added to his repertoire, he has a soul dagger attack where he fires a series of daggers in fixed lines towards the knight that I am just really struggling with. He has a focus ability that he uses at 66% health, where he creates a gigantic focus orb around him that does damage, before creating smaller auras that explode around the arena. This attack is deceptive, as you'd think it's a great move to punish, and it is, but if you're too aggressive, you won't notice the Pure Vessel's next attack while those explosions on the focus move are still going off. Lastly, he has his Void Tendril attack. This has a simple solution: jump up, dash towards the vessel, start nail pogoing. But ironically, I'm so not used to reaching this part of the fight that I always panic when I see that move being used. It's a bit embarrassing at this point and shows I've still got a ways to go. Pure Vessel's weakness is once again being up in the air. His attacks generally are more ground focused, and it's safer to jump over than dash through, as your shadow dash doesn't regenerate fast enough to dodge his next move safely. Though I found issues avoiding his soul daggers in the air, and I find that his lunge comes out so quickly sometimes if I don't jump quick enough. His speed is downright insane, but his moveset is simple enough that it feels learnable. I only ever feel cheated of damage when he decides to teleport above me for one of his soul pillar slams, because there are times it feels nigh unreactable, but that's a me problem, not a problem with the fight. The music on point, the battle itself flawless, the adrenaline that pumps through me after each new phase is reached won't stop, and thank God in the Pantheon of Hallownest you get a free full heal after beating this fight, otherwise I might be singing a different tune. It's just compared to the top two fights, I haven't had as much experience with the Pure Vessel yet, and thus it stays at number 3. Taking today's silver medal, it's time to venture into the realm of nightmares as we take on what was once considered one of the toughest fights back when the Grim Troop DLC launched. Introducing number 2, Nightmare King Grim. Before I get into the moveset or the lore, I must admit this boss ranks this highly both for its quality, which is undeniable, but also because I have personal experience from when I first faced him. I streamed the Grim Troop DLC at launch and spent a good 2 hours on this specific boss fight, going from someone who could barely survive a single hit to a trained professional hell-bent on one thing and one thing only: destroying the Nightmare King. It's no shock that my favourite 3 bosses in Hollow Knight are all fights that enhance an already existing boss's moveset, allowing you to use all your previous knowledge while throwing some curveballs in there to make things even tougher. All the while, the circus nightmare that is Nightmare King Grim's music plays in the background. And of course, he's the only boss outside of the Radiance to have a full-screen title card announcing his reveal. Nobody's doing it like him. His attacks are all enhanced to make them tougher to dodge, or more dangerous in general, and of course, he does 2 masks of damage with every hit, meaning your dodges have to be perfect if you want to survive. His fire bats now require you to thread the eye of a needle and dash through their center to avoid. His dive dash now leaves flame trails that will damage you if you touch them, but the dodging is still the same. His cloak spikes come out quicker, and he isn't present for the attack, so you can't punish. His dash uppercut is quicker, and there's an extra fireball to dodge now. The pufferfish attack has the fireballs traveling at faster speeds, making this easily his most deadly attack, as getting clipped by a fireball or two will decimate your whole health bar. There's his new attack, his flame pillars. Here, 4 flame pillars will periodically appear underneath where the knight is standing, so it's up to you to avoid them as best you can while getting in hits on Grim as he's in the air. Due to the wider arena, I find it easier to slowly inch across the Pantheon of Hallownest variant, while in the main game fight, I try to wrap around so I can damage Grim while dodging the last flame pillar. It's an attack that requires you to develop the muscle memory, and it is definitely the one that can catch new players off guard, but it's all the same stuff you've dealt with in his past form, just amped up. I find this is actually one of the easier fights in the game for me, with my main mistakes coming from his cloak spikes because I always take a hit or two from them. But if you can handle Nightmare King Grim, you've overcome one of the toughest fights in the game, and it feels amazing once you've reached that plateau. A fight I will remember for a long time, but it's not my favorite boss. I think what boss you choose as your favorite in Hollow Knight reflects on the type of player you are, and the type of bosses you enjoy, and the fun part is there really is no wrong answer, unless you say Markov, in which case the sniper is trained on your position as we speak, Chris. So it should come as no surprise that at the peak of my pantheon, at number 1, it's the Sisters of Battle. It starts out simple enough, Mantis Lord's Phase 1, we've done this song and dance before, I know the track. I defeat the Lord, she retreats to her throne, the other 2 rise up to fight me, and then the First Lord stands back up. This is one of the best oh shit moments I've had in years, and happens so early on in the Pantheon of Hallownest that absolutely nobody could have expected this. But oh my god, who knew that having 3 Mantis Lords attacking you at the same time would work so well? Initially overwhelming, you're sure to take some damage, maybe even have your run ended. But as is the case with the base game Mantis Lords fight, the moment you hit that rhythm they ask from you, everything just clicks. Suddenly you're weaving over one dash, jumping mid-air, and pogoing to avoid another, while sliding to the right to avoid a drop attack. You can't stop moving, the mechanics of this fight taken to their extreme as you dash and jump through the sisters. It leaves you with this true sense of power as they demand precision and perfection. There's no stopping to heal anymore, as during the boomerang attacks, the 3rd sister will always attempt to drop at you after the slices are launched. It's fantastic seeing the true potential of the sisters, and knowing that they truly went easy on you in the main game, because had they broken this out from the get-go, we wouldn't have made it into Deep Nest. And could you imagine if the Traitor Lord hadn't defected and instead grew to become a wise lord alongside his sisters? Imagine that boss fight. Oh wait, people already have with Hollow Knight mods. This is a rare example of a fight that is taken to the utmost extremes, yet remains completely fair for the player. Every mistake is still your own fault, be it bad positioning or a faulty dodge. Eventually, you get that 6th sense for the way they attack, until you get the dance and you're on the same track and you find yourself defeating your first lord. And then it's back to the Mantis Lords, a much easier sequence, and then it's back to a singular Mantis Lord, and then the fight concludes. I have no words. Other fights in this game may hold more lore significance or more weight to the narrative or have crazier in-depth movesets, but they're a candle in the wind compared to the roaring inferno that is the satisfaction that comes from being able to dodge the Sisters of Battle perfectly, punishing every attack and maximizing every single interaction. This is why the Sisters of Battle are my top fight in Hollow Knight, and this is why the Sisters of Battle deservedly stand as, honestly, one of my favorite boss fights in gaming. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And that's my list. Which Hollow Knight boss is your favorite? Let me know down below, and be sure to parry that subscribe button, as next week, I'll be ranking the Hollow Knight areas. Let's keep it cute in the comments. My socials are on screen now, feel free to follow where you feel comfortable. I recommend my Twitter, my Blue Sky, or my Discord. A massive shout out to my patrons for supporting me for another month on Patreon. Thank you so much, you guys are amazing. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.